Live from WXOU at Oakland University, it's the GioMoShow. Now, give it up for your host, GioMoShow.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, right here on WXOU, Auburn Hills, Michigan, Oakland University, and all your station identification features complete. I am your host, Giovanni Mosheri, and the GioMoShow is your home for all Oakland sports and beyond on 88.3 FM. Be sure to subscribe right here on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you can find the GioMoShow. So be sure to like, subscribe, and support the podcast however you can. You can also go and support WXOU in many ways, including going to their website, checking out all they got on social media, all we got on WXOU Sports, another YouTube channel for us to have all of our broadcasts, interviews, highlights, and etc. So be sure to go and follow those. Follow me on social media. Follow WXOU on social media. Be sure to support all that we got going on here at Oakland University. So for this show today, we were off last week. We had an important exam coming up for a summer class. I couldn't spare the time, unfortunately. Got a good grade on that, too. So we took a bit of a break, and we come back here finishing up where we left off. We talked about men's basketball in the previous show, a little bit about their season, but more into the offseason. And, kind of at a glance, we didn't know all the details for sure, and we were going to talk about those more on a later date. But today is the women's basketball version of that kind of coverage, and the reason that I'm going a little bit light on the details of both the basketball teams. Why would I do that? Those are the biggest tickets in Oakland University sports. Well, the reason for that is because we got fantastic interviews coming up that will cover them much more in detail. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, subscribe so you don't miss it. We got some of those coming down the pipeline in a couple of weeks. So today we're going to be talking about women's basketball. We're going to give a bit of a glance to the USPBL. We're going to talk a bit about DCFC and the game that I went to over the past weekend. Got to see what Keyworth Stadium was all about. But then we're going to dive deep into the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Not something we usually cover here, but we've talked about a lot of that in terms of more the swimming aspect, just from my swimming history and the swimming guests that we've had on the show as well. But I've been so locked in to the Olympics. I don't want to give it all away, my feelings towards that beautiful event. So we're going to talk about that in the last segment of the show, and it might take up a lot of the show. So gear up. We got basketball, we got baseball, we got Olympics coming up here on the GioMoShow. But before we get started, here's a couple of messages from a couple of our friends of the GioMoShow. Before we get back to the show, let me tell you about Bart's Pizza. Bart Basilico reinvented his father's pizzeria business by putting it on wheels. I'm talking a pizza food truck, baby. Bart and his wife Lauren travel all around Metro Detroit, cooking up homemade pies made fresh to order in their 4-layered pizza oven on wheels. You can find them on their website at eatbartspizza.com and Facebook and Instagram as well at Bart's Pizza. His last name is literally Basil, so you know he knows what he's doing. Make sure to grab a cannoli as well while you're there. Bart's Pizza, it's too good.
Are you looking for the ultimate sports experience? Well, look no further. My name is Jake Masucci, and I host a podcast called Jake's Takes. I am currently a sophomore at Oakland University and am a student manager with the men's basketball program. I started this sports podcast about 6 months ago, and I fell in love. I've been covering NFL, college football, and NBA, and going super in depth with it. I bring on a lot of guests to talk about each sport that they're passionate about. I've even covered some hockey, some baseball. We even dove into some Marvel comics, which was super fun. So this podcast covers a lot, and I've really been enjoying myself. We come out Mondays every week, and we'll even sprinkle in some weekdays. We'll be on Wednesdays sometimes. We'll be on Thursdays sometimes. We'll be on Friday. So sprinkling in every once in a while. The podcast is available on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. And we also have a great YouTube going up. So subscribe to the Spotify, subscribe to YouTube, do whatever you got to do to support the channel. And I really appreciate it. And I'll hopefully see you guys on the next episode of Jake's Takes, but enjoy listening to Giovanni. Peace.
And we're back here on the JoMo Show, your home for Oakland Sports Beyond on WXOU. Here comes the Oakland sports part of our show. We're going to talk about women's basketball in their previous season and some of the changes that we could be expecting to see in this upcoming season. So we're going to give them a bit of a glance in terms of the season they played. And this was a season, us at WXOU, we put a lot of resources into covering women's basketball, obviously because it's one of our biggest ticket items. We're going to do that. So naturally, yours truly was on the call for some of these games during this season. But to kind of look at it from a high level, what was their final record and that kind of stuff. So Oakland finished, I believe, 9th place in the Horizon League standings going into the Horizon League tournament. Didn't win a game moving up into their losing to Northern Kentucky in the opening rounds. They finished the season 12-17 overall and 8-12 in conference. But I do want to say that like the 8-12 record, it was very congested for about that middle part of the Horizon League standings. It was all within about 2 games between, I believe, 3rd to 9th place. So unfortunate that Oakland wasn't able to get that kind of 1 or 2 game edge to get them a great bump in the standings going into the Horizon League tournament. But that was not the case. Kind of breezing through the season, it started things off with a double overtime win at Akron, Ohio, and then 2 losses in the Big Ten to both MSU and U of M. And then we bring it back to the arena with a couple of NAIA, a couple of WAC teams coming into the arena kind of as friends of the program. I got to cover some of those games, not only on the radio, but on TV as well. For the Cleary game, I was on the sideline reporting of it. And I didn't know why we were playing Cleary University or Madonna University. And I learned that there was a bit of a prior relationship between the athletic director, at least of Cleary, and Jeff Tungate, head coach of the Golden Grizzlies. So it was kind of, Cleary's first season for women's basketball in the WAC conference. It was just kind of a way for Oakland to kind of give them a bigger platform and kind of give them some games on the roster and kind of help out some friends in the business. So that was mostly why we played a couple of the WAC teams in the beginning of the home part of the season, and to kind of give you the scores and kind of the sense of the game. It was 110-51 against Cleary, in which Tungate told me that 51 points was way too much to give up for such a defensive-minded team. And then against Madonna, it was 122-38. So not the best games, and it's something that kind of carry out throughout the season. That you look at some of the scoring stats and you look at some of the points per game kind of stuff, including those games, those numbers were very inflated. So I kind of kept that in mind throughout my coverage of the team throughout the season. But then that's when we get into the Horizon League part of it. We face Purdue Fort Wayne. We're just kind of calendar wise. We're in November 30th. We face Purdue Fort Wayne, and then travel to Detroit Mercy to start things off for those early 2 slates of the Horizon League season. Lost both to Purdue Fort Wayne and Detroit Mercy. I was on the road for the Detroit Mercy game. It was a defensive struggle against the Titans. The Titans had 2 of the best rebounders in the league in their first matchup in the Metro Series. And Oakland just had a really hard time getting the offense going. That game ended 66-55 in Callahan Hall. So, and just kind of as I'm going through the games this season, I'm not going to go through every game in such detail, but for those that I was there for and for those that I believe had an extra story, I'm going to mention it. That's kind of how we've been going through these season reviews on the JoMo Show. And a scheduled game against Xavier University was postponed, but then their next opponent was at home against Central Michigan. I was there in the stands as a fan the last time Oakland faced Central Michigan in the arena. I got a sweet hat out of it via Grizz Gang. Shout out to them, and it was a great win for the Golden Grizzlies. But for this one, I was on the coverage for it. I believe I was on play-by-play for this one. I don't think that I was on the sideline for it. I think Elizabeth Kuhn was on the sideline for that game. But it was rough. That game was ugly to watch. It was another size disparity between the 2 teams. Central Michigan had a lot of size. They had one player that was 6'5" and didn't have to jump for rebounds. Essentially, it was one of those games. And Oakland, by midway through the 3rd quarter, they were down by 20. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this game's gonna be rough. We're not gonna get a post game interview or anything. This one is gonna be so rough. But that's not how the game ended. Down by 20, the Golden Grizzlies end up coming back in this one. And I want to give you a sense of in terms of the box score. So where were we down by 20? It was at 6:30 in the third quarter. 6 minutes, 30 seconds left to go. Like I said, right in the middle of the third quarter. Down 57-37. Ugly, ugly game. But then Oakland goes on a run, and by the end of the third quarter, they ended up cutting that to 12. So they go into the fourth quarter down by 12, and then Oakland go for that quarter 26-11 in scoring. Oakland outscoring by 15 points in the last 10 minutes to get a nail-biter win against Central Michigan, 79-76, in what was an incredible, incredible game to watch, and really boosted your spirits in terms of the reporting part of it, because I was asking our silent reporter Liz Kuhn for the Oakland broadcast, thank God that happened, because that would have been such a terrible post-game interview to have to do. It's so fun when your team is down by so much and you got to do the post-game interview with the head coach. This time, the story was totally rewritten. It was totally turned around, and Oakland got the win against Central Michigan in an exciting match. So we continue down another MAC team, or a couple of MAC teams actually, against University of Toledo and Miami, Ohio. Oakland unfortunately losing in both of those. The Miami game was really close. I was on the call for that by myself, but Oakland just wasn't able to get it done against the other two MAC teams. And then we fully dive into the Horizon League part of the season. It started off at versus Northern Kentucky, and then 3 road games: Youngstown State, Robert Morris, Purdue Fort Wayne, home against Detroit Mercy, home against the Wisconsin teams and Cleveland State, a 3-game stint, IUPUI, Wright State, Northern Kentucky, 2 home games, Youngstown State University. I know I'm just vomiting words here, but it's kind of the flow of the season kind of went that way, and we finished out throughout the rest of the season. I won't go too much into the detail, boring you guys with that. But throughout the season, it was just a bit of an offensive struggle for the Golden Grizzlies. Now, they were one of the best defensive teams in the league, as was noted in their in their season reviews. Oakland forced a league-high 20.1 turnovers per game and a league-best 5.24 turnover margin in favor of Oakland. So Oakland was great defensively, especially when it came to getting those extra possessions, but a lot of it came down to offensive struggle. And thus kind of an 8-12 record is what was resulting out of that. And in their first matchup in the Horizon League tournament, it was at home against Northern Kentucky. 89-79 was the final score there, ending the season for the Golden Grizzlies in another season ending shortly in the tournament. But that's not the only story that goes on throughout the season. So I just kind of laid it out in terms of the records and the games and the performances. But one of the bigger stories was that this was another season mostly without head coach Jeff Tungate. It was assistant coach Deanna Richard that was promoted to acting head coach throughout most of the season. Unfortunately, due to some health reasons for Jeff Tungate, wasn't able to continue throughout the season. It's not the first time it's happened, unfortunately. And Oakland, I don't want to say struggled as a result of it, but man, that's tough. That's tough to go through. For a team that all off season long was working with Jeff and was working, in getting better with him. He's a fantastic person just to talk to, and a person to be in the room. I've had many interactions with him just as part of Oakland media, and he's been nothing but respectful and kind and welcoming in that sense. And, and I'm sure that a lot of that extends to the coaching aspect as well. And to lose that presence is really tough. So you got to imagine that kind of weighed on the team throughout the season, but it doesn't mean that they stopped fighting. They continue to fight, like I talked about with that Central Michigan game and other nail biter wins. RMU was a last second buzzer beater, I believe. Oakland beat Green Bay at the last second. Green Bay was at the highest point in the Horizon League, like one of the best teams that the league has, and we beat them at home 83-81. So this team absolutely had fight and absolutely had talent to be able to, hopefully go farther in the tournament, but that's just not how it ended up going. So without Jeff Tungate for a lot of the season, we now look to this season, and I'm not officially reporting this, and this is off of memory from a tweet that I saw from Matt Dodak from the Horizon Roundtable. very, very prominent figure in Oakland in Horizon League media, noted that Jeff Tungett's contract was extended for another year. So it kind of making up for the lost season that he had. And I remember that there were clauses in the contract that had to do with amounts of wins, with it had to, somewhat of some threshold of a seed throughout the Horizon League. I don't know if there was for bonuses or for cancellation of the future contracts. I don't know anything. I don't know much about it, but I remember that being the sense of what this next season holds for Oakland women's basketball. Because Oakland throughout their history, and I'm walking on eggshells here because of how nice and respectful Jeff Tungett has been to me. But listen, I'm a sports podcaster. We cover the Oakland Golden Grizzlies, and sometimes you got to get a little bit critical at times. I don't do it much, but this time I want to kind of go down that route. So it's been a bit of a around 500 kind of record under Jeff Tungett, and it hasn't been a whole lot of postseason success in that sense, and just been kind of floating around 500. So with this contract extension and with this kind of one more year added with thresholds for numbers of wins or Horizon League seedings and things of that nature, it builds a sense that this season is big time, that this season is going to be huge for the program. Jeff Tungett's been here for 10, 11 years now, and there is some outside pressure for, higher expectations of performance. And we're seeing that from members of the Oakland media, that there's a bit of a stronger spotlight on the women's basketball team to improve, like we've seen that of Cleveland State, like we've seen that of Green Bay. So the best teams in the conference, Oakland can have that. So there's some added pressure now going into this next season to be able to do that. And this season is going to have a lot more weight as a result of that. And I hope to see it that way. I hope to see a much better performance, offensively, still holding that full court press kind of a defense, great turnover margins, as we mentioned before. Just getting that boost in offense could be such a big, big deal. So we hope that we are able to see that for next season. And we'll talk to Jeff Tungett a little bit about that on the show once we end up scheduling the interview and kind of getting him in the studio here. I want to see what this next season holds. Does it have that kind of extra significant weight from his side, from his perspective? And, how is the team roster changes through the transfer portal and through graduation go into that? And we'll talk a whole lot about that with Jeff Tungett in the coming weeks, especially before the season gets started here on the Blacktop. But some of the notable additions and changes for the Golden Grizzlies roster is we're losing a lot of talent. Markai McCormick, a one-year transfer, had part-time at Detroit Mercy, and I believe University of Charlotte, somewhere in Carolina. I can't remember, but she was one of our leading scorers, and her in her graduate year spent it at Oakland University. We don't have her back. Cam Grant, we don't have her back. Excuse me, let me keep. Keani Westbrook. Not coming back. Linda Van Schaik, that one's big. All of them for graduation. Those were the seniors that were celebrated on Senior Day. So we're losing a lot in that sense. But not only through graduation, but pardon me here. Look through my notes here. Not only through graduation, but also through transfer portal movement. And excuse me for stalling my speech. I'm trying. I missed somebody, unfortunately. Alexis Johnson was another one of the seniors that graduated here. Another one of the big scorers and leaders on this team. I lost the name for a second. I had to make sure that Alexis Johnson was mentioned because she was awesome throughout the season. So we're losing a big class of seniors for Oakland University. But in addition to that, transfer portal includes Kennedy Montew as well as our camera for a second. Hold on one second here. We'll get that back here on the JoMo Show. It usually just comes back. One moment here. We'll take a break here for technical difficulties. There we are. No, just kidding. We're back. Sorry about that. But Kennedy Montew out of Oakland University, going through the transfer portal to Arkansas State. And then the big one was Brooke Quarles-Daniels. Freshman of the year. And or what was it? Her freshman year, she was all freshman team, freshman of the year, and was all league second team. This year, she was also staying in the all league second team, but also part of the all defensive team. And she was one of the biggest scorers on the team. She was she was the point guard. That's a big cornerstone piece. And she's involved not only with assists and scoring, but rebounding as well. I saw a game where she got 19 rebounds and 21 points. Brooke Quarles-Daniels is an amazing talent out of Macomb, out of L'Anse Creuse North. No, kind of in my backyard. Making Macomb proud at all times. But losing her in the transfer portal is big time. And where did she go? And I say this in a good way. She was able to be picked up and transfer portal her way to the University of Michigan. That's big time. For Brooke Quarles-Daniels, who we had on the show last summer, coming off of her freshman of the year season, we talked to her on one of our early days in the interviews on the GioMoShow, and a very professional, very standing on business kind of person. Keep the work the most important thing. She was a huge piece, one of the biggest pieces to this team. And now she's over in the Big Ten with the University of Michigan. Congratulations to her. But as far as Oakland's concerned, that's a big loss. So it's almost a complete roster overhaul for the Golden Grizzlies coming into this now very pressure-intensive season. And we have had some movements in the transfer portal ourselves coming our way. Some new additions to the Golden Grizzlies, and I'm citing this through the Horizon Roundtable, who listed their top 25 additions to the Horizon League. It was the Horizon League Women's Basketball top impact transfers for 2024-2025. And listed at number 18 was Danielle Grimm, a guard coming to Oakland from the second division of college sports. Was part of the NEC All-Rookie team in the 5'7" Columbus, Ohio product. Pulled 7.5 rebounds a game for her school last season, which could be, and they cite that could be a good fill-in for the rebounding production from the guard position that Brooke Quarles-Daniels had. So Danielle Grimm, number 18 on the list for the Golden Grizzlies. Number 14 was Maddie Randall, coming out of high school in Seattle. I'm reading the article here. She was renowned for her prolific three-point shooting, both in Scholastic and club circuits, and has skills outside of the three-point shot, standing at 6 feet tall, is able to provide a lot on the defensive side, rebounding and the like. That's a big thing that Oakland struggled with at times. A lot of the three-point shooting was on, or Markiah McCormick was really on Linda Van Schaik, who led the team in three-point attempts by a mile. So to get that addition of a three-point shot is going to be great for the Golden Grizzlies. And 6 foot, adding height, because remember, we're losing Kiani Westbrook and Cam Grant. Those are some of our longer length players. So that's going to be a big addition as well. Those are the only 2 Golden Grizzlies that were on the list of the top 25. So I wanted to cite them here. And we'll talk more about them, of course, with Jeff Tungan when we get him on the show about how this new team is looking, because that's a huge roster overhaul. And a lot of the veterans, a lot of the leaders are gone. You got at least 7 of your leaders gone, either through graduation or the transfer portal. That's huge. So we'll see what Oakland women's basketball is able to do with that coming up next season. So that'll wrap up our quick segment on, or maybe not so quick, segment on Oakland women's basketball, taking a look at their previous season and what they got coming up here in the offseason and next season. Coming up next on the GioMoShow, we'll talk a little bit about the USPBL as well as my time at Detroit City FC, their match against Sacramento Republic FC in Hamtramck. And then we'll finish it off with a whole lot of Olympic coverage and conversation. Right here on the GioMoShow, we'll be right back. Welcome back here to the GioMoShow, your home for Oakland sports and beyond from WXOU. My name is Giovanni Moschieri. I'm still your host of the GioMoShow. We're kind of going now into the beyond part of our show. We're going to talk a little about the USPBL, the current standings, and kind of how my Hoppers are doing and how the Mammoths are kind of shooting their way up in the standings. I'll also talk a little bit about DCFC. You know, I'm decked out in the burgundy and gold, and you know, I went to see their game in Hamtramck against Sacramento FC, so we'll talk about my experience there for this segment before we get into the Olympics. That's what I really want to focus on. That's what I really want to talk about for this show here. But taking a look at the standings for the USPBL on Hopper Watch, as we almost lose the camera again. There we go. And it's been a couple of weeks since we really dove into the USPBL. We've been a little light on the coverage on that. Pardon me for that. But for the Hoppers that have been leading in the standings for most of the regular season, at least the first half of the regular season, they've been on top. They've been number one, and it's been the Unicorns and the Mammoths that have really been chasing them the whole time. But now the Mammoths have caught them and have continued to, you know, separate themselves in first place. So as the standings are right now, it's the Westside Woolly Mammoths that are 16-10 on the season. They lead the standings. It is the Eastside Diamond Hoppers 15-13, just a little bit above 500 there, and the Utica Unicorns 16-15, a little less above 500. Meanwhile, the Birmingham Bloomfield Beavers 10-19. They're starting to come back a little bit relatively to how their season has been, but they're still 7.5 games out of first place. Out of first place, yes. So it's been an interesting season. I unfortunately haven't been keeping up too close, especially now that the Olympics are here. But my Hoppers are in a little bit of a struggle here. They're a bit in the swamp at the moment, and you know, we just hope that our Hoppers are able to get back on the lily pad and start getting back to how they've been doing throughout the season. Is if you remember, we're all the way back to Media Day in the beginning of the season. I talked to Ryan Cockney, the manager of the Hoppers. I talked to Brian Schellenberger. I talked to Noah Marcoux, all from the Hoppers, about what they're going to be looking for this upcoming season, and they are strong in their belief that they can be the champions for this season. They know that they have the team and you know they're hungry for it. The Hoppers have never won a championship in the USPBL in their history since 2016 in their establishment as a league. So they had a lot of confidence, and that confidence was proven to be, you know, warranted for their first place in the standings for the first few months of the season. But now it's when it gets tough. And will the tough get going for the Eastside Diamond Hoppers as they try to chase the Westside Woolly Mammoths, get the best seeding they can to win a pennant for the Hoppers? But, of course, not to discredit and not to diminish the value of the regular season, because, you know, for those who aren't familiar with how the playoffs work, it's simply, you know, 1 through 4, you know, in terms of the standings by winning percentage, and the first matchup is 3 versus 4. The winner of that goes against the second seed. Winner of that goes to the first seed, and the winner of that is the champion. So if you're the first seed, you literally have one game to win, and you're the champion. But last year, the Utica Unicorns, last place, got all the way to the championship game and won it. So it's not impossible, no matter what seeding you're in, as long as you are able to get it done in the playoffs. That is the most important part. But one game to be a champion, that sounds a whole lot sweeter. So, you know, all for the Hoppers getting into that first place spot. So now we shift over into the DCFC part, and I get to kind of talk about the reason for the attire for the show here. I was invited via a friend. He had sweet seats from his place of work. He had a couple extra tickets, and he was nice enough to choose me to go with him. And I've never been to a DCFC game before. You know, I've been covering more soccer in, you know, this past summer with my work at the Michigan Soccer Network, but starting to get to understand the USL and to understand even, you know, the Midwest Premier League and other leagues like that. And soccer's a bit complicated to follow in terms of the leagues and, you know, what records go for what and what cups and amateur cups. Like, that stuff does get a little complicated, but what I always knew is that DCFC was the team of the Metro Detroit area, of the Detroit area. I knew that was the case. Neil Rule, a good friend of the program, and, you know, he's been the play-by-play voice of DCFC for around 10 years. Got to say what's up to him after the game. And to see the high about the highest level outside of MLS, to get to see them, it was a great experience. They're in the USL Championship League, which is the top league of the USL, as opposed to the Flint City Bucks, for example, a team that we cover on the Michigan Soccer Network a lot. They are in USL League 2. The whole stuff, and all that stuff gets complicated, and it'll require many Google searches to get a full understanding of it. But essentially, to be able to see them play and to kind of get a sense of the atmosphere was awesome. And for me, when it comes to, and I'll kind of bring this to a greater point, when it comes to going to events, for me personally, going to these sporting events that are outside of the major four of the Tigers, Pistons, Red Wings, and Lions. When it comes to going to sporting events outside of that, I'm always keened in and tuned into the fan experience, the fan atmosphere, because yes, I always appreciate we'll say a lower level of competition relatively to those of the major four sports. And I don't say that as a demeaning way, but to give other people the opportunity to continue to play the sport that they play at a high level, I always have great appreciation for that. But only to a certain extent when it comes to being a fan and to keeping up with the team. Because if there's no good information to look up for the team, and there's no stats, there's no rosters, there's no anything to understand for the team, that kind of excludes you if you're not a family member of one of the players or coaches and stuff. But I look for that. Is there good information for me to follow and understand what the status of the team? Is there a great fan experience there? Not only is there people there, but does the team do enough to show the fans a good time? I look for that all the time. And what I find, not only with DCFC, but with other teams that I've been to, when it goes into the USPBL, and it also goes to the Royal Oak Leprechauns. When it comes to those teams, all of them do a good job at a fan experience. Some in different emphasis than others. USPBL is a lot more family focused, a lot more for younger children when it comes to the mascots and running around the base and stuff. I appreciate that, yeah, but it's also good baseball. There's good information, and it's good to watch for just the sport's sake. And the Royal Oak Leprechauns, in a higher level of minor league baseball, a much bigger league, and a lot of college talent on those teams, good information. The soundboard that they have there, I always talk about it, is my favorite part, and that gives me, it's such a great addition to the fan experience. So I always pay attention to that stuff. But what DCFC has kind of goes beyond what the team itself provides. Their fan experience is dictated by the fans, in the sense that I don't know this for sure, but I believe the Northern Guard is the name of their fan section, of their rowdy fans. They are incredible. When I was there, I was so captivated by the energy that they brought, and I'm sure they do that for every game. And for seeing it in person, it was spectacular. That kind of a fan atmosphere, it was amazing to me. Not only with just the vocals and the chants and they're chanting "FU," actual "FU" for parts, when there's a bad call or when someone's kind of faking an injury in front of them on the touchline. They have chants like that, and they got a drum line, man. I don't know what it is with a drum line, but it's such a primal instinct to be totally captivated by the rhythm of the beat and your heartbeat kind of matching it and you getting that same energy. I'm sure there is kind of a human instinct to respond to that kind of a rhythm. But my God, it was putting my heart rate at the same rhythm. I was into it. You can tell when the big moments were happening just by the sound that they were making, by the excitement and volume. I was so captivated by that throughout the entire match. That's an incredible atmosphere, and it's dictated by the fans. It's not like, funny sound effects by the PA announcer or stuff like that. PA does a good job. Soccer is not a whole lot of PA to do aside from substitutions, but man, it was just awesome to see the crowd and what they do. And what's even better for me, so this one kind of goes into the team itself as an organization, gearing it towards the fans. So that kind of atmosphere is not for everybody. I understand that. That atmosphere is for those like me. That I would, that is my style of going to games, if appropriate. To be loud and chanting and excited and trying to get yourself involved in the game. That's a crowd, especially in those kind of lower level teams where it's a lot more local and interactive in that sense. You as a crowd member are part of the game. You are. Same thing in Oakland. You're close enough to all the action to where you're involved in the game. And I kind of like that for those kind of sports as well. It reminds me of a bit of an Oakland atmosphere. But what the team does for those who aren't into that, who aren't into the big chanting and shouting and drum beating and horn sounding, you can buy tickets in a section that, it's a regular fan section. Not a whole lot of loudness and stuff, but you can buy tickets specifically to be in that loud part of the crowd, where the expectation is that you are cheering and that you are going crazy and that you are getting involved in the game and bringing the energy up in the stadium. You are expected and allowed and welcomed to be a crazy fan. That is what I love. It accommodates both those who like it, who like having kind of a quiet and just watching the game, and those who want to get wild. I want to get wild. And that's something that speaks to me almost directly. I love that about the team. I love that they do that. That's the kind of fan atmosphere that I always look for these for these kind of lower level non-major 4 sports teams. What an amazing addition, man. I was just so impressed with all that I saw. Even the food trucks, it was a great variety of selection. Hamtramck is a very ethnic community of those more of the Arab descent. It's great history there, and all kinds of different food. I went. It was called Waka. It was a yellow food truck that served East African cuisine. I had chicken chapati. I never knew what a chapati was, but it was amazing. And I wouldn't get to know what that was like unless I went to a DCFC game where it's a very strong ethnic community, of all kinds. It's just, so to kind of wrap it up and put a bow on this, is I was very impressed with the crowd. I was impressed with the match itself. We didn't get the win, but that's high level soccer. And I was just impressed overall with my experience there. And I'm damn sure I'll be going to another game before the season's end, because I know they got a whole lot coming up in the month of August. So you guys will see me in Hamtramck at one point or another throughout the rest of this USL Championship season to cheer on DCFC. So that'll wrap up our kind of local sports roundup. Here on the GioMoShow, we'll be going now into the Olympics. Now, instead of Oakland sports, we go way beyond. We go global. Talking about the 2024 Paris Olympics. Coming up next on the GioMoShow. Welcome back here to the GioMoShow. Final segment, we go global. Talking about the Paris 2024 Olympic Games being held currently over in the nation of France. And why do I love the Olympics so much? Well, it's a broad question, and it's a question I'm asking myself and answering myself. The Olympic Games, to me, is the greatest sporting event in human history. I forget if it's the 34th or 35th Olympiad, but this is, to me, the absolute highest level of any sport. Now, I know that the Super Bowl is a big deal, and I know that the NBA Finals are a big deal, and that the World Cup is a big deal. But the Olympics, to me, maybe not on an audience perspective. I'm not talking about the audience numbers. But in terms of respect in terms of legacy and in terms of accomplishment, I believe the Olympics to be the highest level of competition in human history. Because it goes back, its history, to ancient Greece. It is the oldest sporting competition in human history. And a lot of the events, what I love about it so much is that a lot of the events, and now many have been added to it that kind of don't quite qualify for this, but when it comes to events like track and field specifically, but also in swimming and weightlifting and those kind of like pure athletic, pure athletic, not so much of a game competition. Those are some of the oldest competitions in human history. Because think about it, going back to ancient Greece, the competitions were simple. Who can throw the farthest? Who can jump the highest? Who can run the fastest? Who can lift the most? Who can throw an arrow the farthest? You kind of bring your brain back in time like that, and you see it today as like this is a celebration of human ability. And the Paralympics extend to that as well. Of course they do. But to me, that kind of human history aspect of the Olympics is something that you can't find it in any other sport. Because a lot of the other sports are not so much physical achievement as they are games of skill and strategy. And of course, that stuff is involved, but a pure competition of who's the strongest, who's the fastest, who could throw the farthest, who can do this skill the best. I love that about the Olympics. And kind of not only that, but the fact that it's a global stage. The fact that it's not just like who's the best in this specific league, or like in the NFL, in this specific private institution, in this business. Who's the best in this business? This is who is the best on planet Earth. You guys know this, but I want you to understand this. Who is the best in the world? We're talking about world records being beaten each and every Olympic Games. The greatest athletes that human history has ever seen are on display for like 3 weeks. 3 weeks straight. And I don't say all that kind of ancient Greek stuff to discredit the game events of the Olympics, like volleyball, basketball, rugby, soccer. I'm not saying that to discredit any of those, because those are a different kind of aspect to it. That is, who is the greatest assembly? Who is the greatest team? Who is the greatest machine of performance on planet Earth? I love that stuff just as much. And it's so enthralling to me when the Olympics are on. And kind of going to my personal experience with it, I was a swimmer in high school, and luckily my years of schooling kind of lined up with the Olympics. Going into my freshman year in high school, I've never swam before, but my friends convinced me into doing it. Oh, that was the Rio Olympic Games, and that was Michael Phelps. And I got to kind of get a preview as to what I was getting myself into. And it was kind of scary to see kind of what I was getting into and how difficult it is, just visually watching these Olympic swimmers. And I'm like, God, I got to do that? But it was inspiring. Watching that inspired me to kind of hear the history of to what these players have done and dedicated themselves to for 4 years at least. In most cases, their entire lives dedicated to that one moment on the global stage in the greatest sporting event in human history. Seeing that was very inspiring to me going into my swimming career. And it gave me a great appreciation for the sport. And, to kind of have unfortunately COVID interrupting the Tokyo Olympic Games, I ended up doing it in 2021. That's when I graduated high school. And now this is when I graduate college. It's cool to kind of see the moments in my life where, wow, I was a freshman in high school the last time I saw Michael Phelps win gold that kind of stuff is cool to me, to kind of see that kind of history, not only with the sport, but with myself. And kind of extending to that, I'm kind of getting lost in my thoughts here, but to kind of put a bow and move on here is, not only is it the greatest sporting competition in the world, but it's also the greatest broadcasting achievement in the world. And I want to kind of break this down for you guys. I'm a broadcaster, obviously. And since I've been in the world of broadcasting, I have such a fascination with the behind the scenes and with the how and the technical stuff that goes into giving you the broadcast that you see. And just from all it takes is a little bit of experience with a microphone and camera for you to understand how difficult this stuff is to pull off. And how complicated the systems are to bring you coverage of a very abundant event. We'll call it that. Because think about it. You see Mike Tirico, who does a fantastic job hosting the Olympics. God, I love Mike Tirico. You have him hosting for 3 weeks straight. He has to cover and talk about and be knowledgeable about live in front of the world on NBC about every event in the games. Everything from track and field and swimming to equestrian and archery. Mike Tirico needs to talk about it. Mike Tirico needs to know about it. And how does he get that? How is he able to do that? Well, in all of the venues in all of Paris right now, there is an entire camera crew, sound crew, production crew, broadcasting talent crew, social media crew at every single venue, at every single event going on the Olympics, many going on simultaneously. All of that information, all the stats and the history and just kind of the game notes of each event. Who is each player? How long have they been training? How long have they been on this team? How long, where's their family from? Where's their family in the stands? Who is that family member? Think about that. All of that just for one event has to be broken down and delivered not only to you, the viewer, but to the broadcasting crew. Mike Tirico needs to, most likely on a teleprompter, obviously. That's too much to understand for one person. But he needs to be able to get kind of a heads up to prep a little bit before he goes on camera talking about the U.S. women's volleyball team against China and how that went to set 5 and who each player is in the 6'6" outside hitter that China has. What's her history? How long have they been playing together? He needs to go from that to swim and dive, to gymnastics, to equestrian, to mountain biking. I want you guys to understand how complicated this stuff is to pull off on a broadcasting sense. Understand and appreciate what you're watching. And if a broadcaster messes up, understand how much they have on their plate to be able to deliver all this. Understand how difficult this stuff is to pull off. Even my work at the Michigan Soccer Network, a fraction of what they have to do in these professional broadcasts. I had to do a highlight show. I got to do a highlight show for a couple of weeks where I had basically a week to prepare, for most of the highlights I was going to see. I called many of the games. I saw the highlights. I know what I'm expecting, and I know the kind of Sports Center style I got to do it in. Dude, it still takes me at least 5 takes. But Tirico and everyone else on that broadcasting crew does it live with mere minutes of prep because it just happened. You can't prepare for it. The event just happened. U.S. just won gold in the women's 100 butterfly with 1 and 2. You can't prep for that event happening, that specifically in detail. You can kind of get a heads up, like, oh yeah, they might do this, but all that stuff is live and instant and right now. Understand the broadcasting achievement that all this is. I read a little bit of Al Michaels' autobiography called "You Can't Make This Stuff Up," where he talked about covering the 1980 Winter Olympics, where the Miracle on Ice happened, or maybe it was 84, I forget. But where the Miracle on Ice happened, he detailed his experience not only dealing with multiple events that you're not very familiar with. Al Michaels never called hockey before doing the Miracle on Ice, or at least he called like a couple of games. So a lot of these broadcasters are put into unique positions to call games that they don't know about. They call sports they don't know about. And I keep going to equestrian as the example, but like, imagine you as a basketball broadcaster, as a soccer broadcaster. There's only so many you can have on a single crew. Hey, you need to go do archery. You need to go do swim and dive. You need to go do cross-country skiing, going to the winter games. That, understand, that's a lot of what these broadcasters are put in the position of. And Al Michaels, he's never really called hockey or skiing or skating or all that kind of stuff, but he had to do it for his job. And a lot of it was very tightly timed because of not only the fact that it was live and you got to get it going right away, but there's a time zone difference. You have to get it ready so that it can be broadcast and premiered for back at home. Because we got an ocean's distance between us and France, so you see it live at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then you see it again in prime time. So they got to get all the highlights done, all the replays and graphics, all that's got to be done like right away because it's got to be shown live and then again. So I'm going on and on and on, but I keep wanting to, I want to hammer home how much goes into this. I want you guys to appreciate that. Because as broadcasters, our job is to entertain, inform, and please the audience. But just like any other job, this stuff is difficult. And unfortunately for broadcasters, not a lot of people care about why this error happened, why the camera got cut, why the microphones got cut. But understand that these are people doing this job under immense pressure, not only for the magnitude of their event, but the time restrictions as well. So as you guys are continuing to watch the Olympics, think about what's going on behind the scenes to bring you that coverage from an entire ocean away. Think about that. And hopefully you'll gain a little bit more of appreciation for the sports that you watch. And of course, cheer on Team USA. Cheer on your teams, whatever country your family hails from. I had a little bit of fun seeing Italy win gold in 2 swimming events. That stuff was really cool to see. But the Olympics are amazing, man. It's the greatest sporting event in human history. It gives spotlights to sports that would never get covered otherwise. And it is the greatest. You are watching the greatest moment in each of those athletes, their careers. This is the greatest moment in their athletic careers, and you're watching it constantly for 3 weeks. It's amazing, and I want you guys to understand that and appreciate it as you go and continue to cheer on Team USA or whatever other nationality, country you are rooting for. Go for gold, enjoy it, and let's have fun. Let's have fun as a planet. That's what I love about the Olympics. So that will wrap up us on the GioMoShow. We talked about Oakland women's basketball. We talked a little bit about DCFC, USPBL, as well as the Olympic Games. Coming up on the GioMoShow next week, or throughout this week, we're going to talk a whole lot more about the Olympics and a whole lot more about Oakland basketball. Coming up tomorrow, I will be welcoming in Ian Allen of Oakland University Swim and Dive, someone who is very knowledgeable about Team USA swimming, their rivalry with Australia, and, of course, what goes on in the competition pool for these high-stakes meets. So we're going to be talking to Ian Allen tomorrow, to be released later this week. We'll eventually be talking to Jeff Tungett of Oakland women's basketball, as well as Jeff Smith of Oakland men's basketball. So we got a whole lot coming up on the GioMoShow. Be sure to subscribe right here on YouTube, wherever you're listening, to not miss anything on the GioMoShow. Be sure to go and like us on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. Wherever you can find the GioMoShow, be sure to support your one and only podcast for Oakland sports and beyond from WXOU. My name is GioMoShow, and this has been the JioMo Show. We'll see you next week.